So Buemi with 27.5 seconds of a lead. Now I seem to remember that the last time we did this it was 30 seconds. It's not enough.
I wonder what the overlap is.
It's good.
It's so much of it is in and out laps, time in the pits.
But the key thing that Paul mentioned there is the time that the fuel takes to go in on the last stop. And that always assumes that everything else remains constant, which in motorsport in general, in sports car racing in particular, that is seldom the case. The two Astons are battling at the head of the GTE Am. This is 16th and 17th overall. Jamie Campbell-Walter and Nicky Team are separated by probably 4 or 5 Astons length as they come through turn number 15.
Only 7/10 of a second now, so that's come down a full second from the last time we looked in on this battle. It was 1.7 seconds then. Now it's 0.706 seconds.
At Specutainment, because at Radio Le Mans is still on the Twitter naughty step, we think.
No,
you're back up, are you? Okay, fine. She served her stop and hold from Twitter. She had a Twitter lane infraction, clearly. Now let's get down to Aston Martin, to Louise Beckett and Darren Turner.
Darren, obviously completely devastated from that. Tell us how you picked that damage up.
It's in turn 4. In fact, 97, 98 and 99. We've all had the same problem over the weekend. It's just unlucky. We've had it in the race. Made a small mistake, got a little bit of oversteer on entry, and it just takes you offline slightly. And they put the normal curves, and then inside those curves are these really big curves that they don't look much, but when you hit them, they do a lot of damage, and it just pushed the damper through the strut. So it's pretty much game over straight away. As soon as you hit it, makes a bang, and you know that it's all game over. So a massive disappointment. You know, we're leading the championship coming into this weekend. We haven't really had the best of weekends with raw pace, but at that time I was hunting down the Porsche, and we're putting in some good lap times at that point, but made a small mistake, and it's cost us dear.
And in terms of the championship?
You know, 3 more races after this, so it can all go in a different direction, but it wasn't really the weekend we needed. I think the guys right now are just seeing if they can fix it and we can get out and do some laps just to try and pick up some points towards the end of the race, but right now it's not looking too good.
Thank you.
And that's a smart thing to do, because they'd only be 10 points back of the joint new leaders if it remains the same way as it does, and those joint new leaders would be the 51 and 92 crews, Jimmy Bruni and Mark Lieber behind the wheel of those two cars at the moment. So an extra couple of points here and there could make massive differences towards the end of the season. Mike Conway for the number 26 Oregon Nissan, the Delta, the G Drive Racing, excuse me, still leads the P2 category by a lap, pretty much actually. He's just sitting in behind Pierre Caffa.
He's going faster and faster. But he's just turned the best lap for the car.
Oh, here's the battle for the lead in GTE Am as they come up behind Nick Johnson into turn 1, and the 95 car makes a copy-boot pass. How hard will these guys fight? As
pretty hard.
Nicky Team has got through. Jamie Campbell-Walter. Now what does he make of that? He drops straight in behind.
He tried him a little bit on the exit of 2, but then thought better of that and fell right in line. And now Team is starting to stretch it out a little bit. Yeah, stretching it out quickly.
Yes, which makes me wonder if that Aston has had a little bit of an issue, because he has been caught rather quickly. Aston fielding 5 cars here. They'll be down to 4 for the remaining rounds of the season. Didn't catch the interview with John Gore, Aston Martin's managing director, Aston Martin Racing's managing director. It's at the start of our qualifying program. 1:47.868 for Alan McNish, and the gap all of a sudden is down to 25 seconds at the head of the field.
I think they used prime rib on him.
Yeah. Texas prime rib, man.
Texas prime rib.
You better believe it. I had a really, really good Texas ribeye last night. Thoroughly enjoyed it too. Buemi trying to respond as a fast first sector. due in, Paul, in about, what, 4 or 5 laps time, Buemi?
Yes, on a couple of hiccups, but he should be coming in at the end of lap 154, assuming that he can do an Anthony Davidson and make his fuel last 26 laps. If he can only do 25 laps, which is what he did earlier on, then he'll be coming in on lap 153. So that's another 4 laps from now. Interesting to look at the lap times from Alan McNish, just setting the fastest lap for that car on his last lap. He's had 3 flying laps since he's been in the car, Alan McNish. 49.4, 48.9, 47.8 for Alan McNish. He's certainly got the bit between his teeth. And anything that I thought was another interesting remark that Anthony Davidson made about them putting the quick driver in for longer, which was a kind of a half-hearted slap at Alan McNish and Tom Christensen to say, look, Duval's the quick driver. Well, I think both Alan and Tom Christensen have raised their game, haven't they, with those lap times. Alan then not dropping outside the 150s since he's been in the car. Sebastian Buemi due in fairly shortly for what should be a fuel-only stop, and his last lap of 48.8, but the one before that was a 1 minute 50.5, and so, you know, that's kind of changeable lap times, which does hurt the average, and overall means that gap is coming down, as Jim was saying a moment ago, now down to 26.6 seconds between the first 2 cars. We are owed a pit stop from Sebastian Buemi, and they both will then have a further stop after that.
Paul, do you think, is this Audi playing the long game? Have they been saving a little bit in that car? And now, as John said earlier, they've unleashed the Terrier, they unleashed Christensen, and they've told the guys, go, it's time to go. We've passed the halfway point, and run it hard.
I would love to know the answer to that question, because as you know, before you even got to Texas, I was kind of trying to work out what the lap times would be, and the lap times which were done in practice and qualifying weren't as quick as I thought they were going to be.
Me either. I was.
But the average lap times that McNish, Christensen and Duval have been doing in the latter stages of this race are much closer to what I predicted were going to be the average lap time. So I suspect there might have been a little bit of sandbagging going on. There might have even been a little bit of sandbagging going on earlier in the race, and then Audi realised actually we're going to have to push a little bit harder if we're going to win this race. On the other hand, you know, as the race evolves and the track gets a little bit grippier, it gets quicker anyway. So, you know, and of course we did have a lot of rain, didn't we, on Friday. So,
yes.
Yeah, overall, I don't know. I suspect Audi always like to have a little bit up their sleeve, but the drivers will always tell you they're pushing as hard as they can.
What we can say, though, Paul, is how much, you know, even if they've done the same number of laps per stop, we can say how much fuel's gone into the cars. That's the information that you have from Al Kamel. So we can at least look at that and see whether those runs have been run effectively at the same power level, the same map, or whatever, can't we?
Yes, we can, and they've been using the same amount of fuel on every stop. I just went back and checked as you were saying that question. So yes, I mean that tends to indicate maybe just the traffic has fallen better for them. But it's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Paul Truswell back in our data centre in Woking.
Things are starting to hot up in GT, John. The 99 car's lead is falling a little bit, as it is now just 4 seconds ahead of the Tony Vielander car. Fred Makovic in the number 99 Aston Martin has got, when they cross here, a 2-second lead now. 2-second lead over Tony Vielander. And then Gianni Bruni in the, Jimmy Bruni, in the number 51 Ferrari. So the 2 AF Corsa Ferraris are hot on the heels of the number 99 Aston Martin, as Bruni is 15 seconds behind Vielander, so he's 17 seconds behind Makovic.
But, Jim, both of those Ferraris are going to have to make another pit stop before the end of the race. And I reckon that Makovic can go through to the flag now on his on that tank for the fuel that he's got at the moment.
He's only just stopped. He's only just stopped, Fred Macro. Don't forget. So he could probably.
Well, they're all on 4. That's why I thought they were all together, because they're all on 4 stops. So that means the Ferraris are going to have to make an extra one more stop in the race.
And so does the Porsche.
Okay,
and so is the Porsche.
So the Aston gets that much better gas mileage?
Yes, it does.
Wow.
Yes, it does. And is quick at the same time. Some consternation about that part of the balance of performance.
Green Challenge competitor.
Yeah, absolutely. Has led to at least one Ferrari Am competitor, in fairness, saying that that might force him out of the championship for next year and make him look elsewhere. Just feel that they're getting a fair crack of the whip. Matt Griffin brings the 61 Ferrari in the GTE Am category. That car's had a certain lack of pace today as well, down in 5th position. Matt was in good shape and in good form rather. Earlier on when I spoke to him on the grids, Tom Kimber-Smith brings the 41 Zytek Nissan in from 5th place in LMP2, and Olivier Pla puts the fastest lap of the race in the 24 Morgan Oak, 1:54.6. So that car back out again after its issue earlier on, and the leader is in the pits lane. Shea Adam is down there for RadioLeMans.com and the FIA WEC. Oh, except she's not. So we can see it, fortunately. Didn't realise that she wasn't coming through in my right ear. That looks... Oh, yes, I can hear you now, Shea. Go ahead.
Excellent. Just needed a battery change. The number 8 Toyota is in the pits. Just a quick stop. Not tires, no driver change, just fuel and a fuel bottle for the driver. It looks like everything went according to plan. And wow, that was really quick. Back out onto the pit lane and heading for turn 1.
Jeremy mouths quite clearly to me, fabulous stop from Toyota, and it takes off on electric power only. So
53 seconds.
Wow.
53 second stop. So that's 30 seconds better than...
a drive-through is 25 seconds, as we know, because Fesler's last time in the pit lane was a drive-through.
So he took roughly 20 seconds of fuel.
Yeah. And that's it. Thank you. Good night. And they take off.
And they'll take even less in the next stop.
Correct. But they will need tyres. Now there's, you see, there's the rub. If you have a fight, would you rather be 30 seconds, 20 odd seconds further back down the road on new rubber, or have track position on older rubber?
I'd rather have the rubber.
You'd rather have the rubber?
Yep.
I think I'd rather have the track position.
Not with these. If I had these drivers, if it was me, I'd want the track position. If I had these drivers, I'd want the rubber.
Okay. Okay. No, I see that. So just over an hour still to go. John Hindhaugh, Jim Roller, Paul Truswell, Jeremy Shaw, and Shea Adam rotating through this 6-hour race. It's a classic. It is a classic, this race, because it is that, I mean, we predicted this earlier, certainly Paul Truswell did, before we'd even turned a wheel, despite not having been here before. The numbers had been looked at, and the classic endurance struggle is tortoise and hare, endurance or efficiency versus speed. In the old days, it was slightly more marked than this because reliability was an issue as well. We get used now to cars completing 24, 36-hour tests without batting an eyelid at it. In fact, if there is an issue at Le Mans in the 24 hours, we kind of look at that as the exception rather than the rule. The rule is cars get to the end, particularly in the Prototype 1 works categories. But it really is about using or going a stop, one stop fewer or slightly shorter stop at the end, and by extending their fuel window. It's never a bad thing to extend your fuel window, because it always means, even if you can't save a stop, that your last stop will need less fuel, which is time dependent.
Right. Well, and one caveat on your question about the tires. If I'm gonna stop first, I'll take the tires. If I'm gonna stop second, I'll take the track position.
Yeah, no, I'll buy that for $1.
And the other thing that Charles Dressing, our colleague and friend, always says, endurance racing is a pyramid.
Yeah.
The start of the race is way out here, and what I'm showing John is my hands spread far apart. And in the 6 hours, you have all these different strategies, techniques, variables that all lead to the point that is the last 2 laps of the race.
Yeah.
And if everything is good, all the strategies come together for that last last half hour of the race.
We're inside the last hour of the race, and Jimmy Bruni pits the 51 Ferrari. We're potentially heading towards a championship lead, or at least a share of it, if nothing else changes between now and the end of the race. We wait to see whether the Aston Martin can get back out onto the pits now. A little while ago, it seems like an age ago, Alex Brundle was in with us, and whilst we were talking to him, I was just about to get him to do a bit of commentary and give me a break. And whilst we were talking, Ollie Pla had to bring your car in because of an issue. What was the problem, first of all, Alex?
Yeah, we had a rear suspension issue, failure of rear wishbone. Not obviously to do with the contact that we had earlier on in the race.
It was on the other side.
It was on the other side, yeah. So doesn't mean to say it wasn't to do with it, as you well know. But yeah, more data required before we come to a conclusion on that one.
Back out though.
We are back out. Yeah, we're back in 6th place.
Okay, not great, but getting some championship points and extending your opportunities within the championship. But you're looking for good results now, aren't you, as we look back towards the start of the race. Now, here's all the stuff you haven't seen, because you were out there. First corner, coming up the hill, watch the Lotus in the background getting turned around. A decent scrap from the guys at the front of the field, and somebody's just looped it right in front. That's a Chrome Racing Ferrari stopped, and the exit of turn 20, but gets going again. Broken suspension on the Lotus, which then had to be recovered, and then an Audi hitting one of those pyramids, and that's not a good thing to do, Alex.
No, they are massive when you're down in the they're really, really huge. I was just thinking how polite it was in the first corner as I headed down into the first sector there.
The overfueling of the Porsche, dripping onto a hot brake disc and causing a bit of an incident, and then at the front of the field, it's been all about a bit of paint trading, a bit of bumping and barging, but Audi versus Toyota matched very closely on pace, but running different strategies, with the Toyota getting a few more laps, 2, 3 more laps than the Audis. The Audis being a bit quicker on average lap times, but we'll wait to see whether that will shake out. Tom Christensen doing his first stint and swapping to Loic Duval, who then did a double, and then Tom got back in again, and now Alan McNish is going to go to the end of the race. The speed of these P1 cars through the sweepers are just unbelievable.
Absolutely incredible when they come past us, yeah, for sure. In previous races, we've seen kind of an appreciable difference while we're out there between the two types of manufacturer P1, the Toyota and the Audi, as they come past us. But in this race, it's not the case, whether the Audi is aered up or wow, I thought that was going to be a great move. He thought better of it, didn't he?
But 270 kph for the big boys down there. What you put it down the back straight?
Quite a long way below that. We're down in the 230s, 240s.
Really? All right. So it's not like the old days when the P2s could compete with the P1s. The new regulations brought in a few years ago has made that difference in performance.
Oh yeah, it's really, really appreciable. If they're coming out of the last corner within 3-4 car lengths of you, they'll be well past you by turn 1.
Right. So the highlights of the race so far playing out on the big screen here in Texas, and for those of you watching our syndicated coverage, this track has raced actually better than I thought it would. I thought it might turn into a bit of a one-line track, particularly through some of the places. The S's, we were talking about that earlier, clearly a bit of patience needs to be used there though.
Yeah, that Toyota's got a hell of a load of downforce on. You can see it when we race around it, and I think this track has come to them in that sense. They are really, really swift through the first sector, noticeably so, versus the Audi.
And it really just hearing the spin for Treluar into turn 12 a bit earlier on, where he locked up the rears going in there, might have been a lock-up on a downshift. Oh, that's a peak. That's the.
And this was us.
That was you. That was. So we can tell exactly. That was almost exactly an hour ago when you were in there. As we're going through the highlights, McNish has been reinstalled into the Audi. It is Buemi to the finish in the Toyota. Both have one stop to do, but the Toyota will stop later. We were positing between ourselves what we would rather have. If the Toyota will be going on to the second stint on the tyres, do you take the tyres for the last sprint, or do you take the track position if you're in the lead?
Tyres aren't big here. The fuel effect is massive because there's massive changes of direction, but tyres are not a big deal. I'd have the track position here.
Okay, Loic Duval is down in the pit lane. Stay with us, Alex Brundle. We'll have another word with him in a moment as Louise is down in the Audi pit.
like it's certainly been a close battle. Can Alan keep that lead? And more importantly, can those tyres hold out?
I mean, we are trying. Alan is doing his best now, and I think we can make it. You know, I mean, it was quite difficult at the beginning of the race, but then we carry on. Now the speed looks pretty good. It's going to be a nice fight, which is great for everybody. But we do have our chance, so finger crossed for the moment.
Thank you.
Paul Truswell is running the numbers, and I know Martin Pass down at Audi is listening to this. Buemi will be about 7 laps short of the race distance, whereas McNish will need 2/3 of a tank. So Buemi, it's a no-brainer. You're not going to spend another 20-odd seconds getting tyres there.
No, absolutely. Well, where they've got problems is then if McNish covers them and doesn't take tyres either, and then they've got no tyres to play with and no track position. So it's going to be an interesting scrap for sure.
The thing is that Toyota can take their pit stop last, and that is an advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, very much so.
Because it gives you more options effectively.
Yeah, well, obviously, you know, if you play a game of cards and you can see the cards across from you, of course you're going to have an advantage on you.
30 seconds is the gap at the moment. I'm not sure that is going to be made up in the fuel fill alone. In fact, I'm sure that it won't be. Paul Truswell, who has the advantage at the moment back in our London or our Woking data centre?
It's difficult to work out from this distance. I reckon it's Audi that just has the advantage, but it is. I mean, it's an absolute battle to the flag. The advantage is that Buemi only, as I say, only is going to need to take on that 7 laps worth of fuel when he comes in. As Alex was just saying as well, McNish will have to stay on his set of tyres. What McNish doesn't know is quite how his tyres are going to last for that second stint, because they've never run the same set of tyres for a stint and 2/3. Whereas Buemi, they've run the car for the best part of 50 laps on that single set of tyres. So to ask the tyres to go another 7 isn't such a big ask. It may be that as they get towards the flag, McNish may have the lead, but he's struggling on his tyres.
Got a yellow flag out on the circuit at turn number 6. It is our extreme sailor, Monsieur Maris. Not sure what he was doing at that part of the track, if I'm honest there, Alex. He's big step up for him. Hasn't done any prototype racing before, and he's facing the wrong direction there. Now, this could throw a spanner in the works if we need a safety car to get him pulled out of there.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to have to be quite a long safety car, isn't it, for Buemi to start making the end of the race. But if they have some trouble... We were quite long, weren't we, getting rid of that Lotus at the start of the race?
They couldn't get it onto the flatbed, I don't think.
Oh, was that why?
Yeah. But you're right, it did take a long time. Did that surprise you? It's obviously you could see the car there. What happens then between you and the pits as we're watching the battle here between Tom Kimber-Smith and the
Orica 25.
Now that's not a battle for position. That's okay. Just keep an eye on that. What goes on between you and the pit box at that time?
Well, the first thing you're considering is are we tight on fuel? Do I need to save fuel?
Yeah.
Second thing is then tyre temperature, tyre pressure. Where am I at with my tyres at the moment? For example, how long is it going to be until we're back up and running again? Do I need to be warming my tyres at the moment? And then it's just a wait, to be honest, for the safety car to be called in, and then there's a process of rewarming and getting going again.
Now that was right at the start of the race, of course. If that was in the middle of the race, the conversation comes, are we in the pit window, doesn't it?
Yeah, correct.
But you don't have to make that decision straight away in WEC because the pits are closed for 3 laps. Is that a help or a hindrance?
It gives you a little bit of time for sure, but it's quite complex and it changes from venue to venue. For example, in Sao Paulo, where we had one safety car, the complexion of a safety car period changed massively in comparison to somewhere like Le Mans, where you've got 3.
Yeah.
So it's a massively big deal, and it really does vary race by race.
So we're getting inside the last 50 minutes shortly. Alex Brundle is joining us, and it's very tight indeed between the 71 Ferrari and the Porsche of Mark Lieb. In fact, that's a change of position as Kobayashi has gone through. Thank you, Jeremy. And taking that position up to 3rd. And let's go down to the pit lane. John Martin is waiting for Louise.
John, you just said Mike went out on new tyres and you're debating what you're going to do for that last pit stop.
Yeah, I mean, we got enough of a lead. I think it's a minute 34 or something over the PCOM car, so we got a bit of time in hand to sort of play it safe, maybe put a new set on, but I think the way the circuit's really rubbering in, you could probably easily do a double stint, so yeah, we'll see what happens, really.
Thank you.
We're just, obviously, as you might imagine, Alex Brundle standing just to my right here, having a look at the 24. Ollie Pla ripping off some decent laps at the moment in the mid-55s, and he's got something to aim at because Jan Charouz is only a little bit up the road, not too far up the road, within striking distance, and that's 4th position. In fact, he's just come into the pits. So, laps away from the guys further ahead. That's the big problem, isn't it?
Yeah, we're pretty limited.
Good read of timing screen, well done.
I've been learning. Yeah, still pretty limited on what we can achieve, but it's just nice to take some points away, you know, and critically, considering the 35, which is behind us, points make prizes in the difference that we can achieve even on a bad day.
Have you been enjoying doing the GP2 and the GP3 stuff?
I really have, yeah.
It shows. It really does. You can hear it in your voice.
You know, over time I kind of got a little bit more used to it and how the races run. At the start it was kind of a little bit difficult to know who's on what tyre when and what that means, but once you've watched a few of them, and I mean watch them properly, and you well know that sitting at home watching a race on your sofa is nothing like standing with the timing screen, the race control feed, you know, the TV screen and your Twitter open, and watching a race with all of that information in front of you. Many a pitfall there.
Yes, well, exactly, and as anybody who's tried to do this knows, if there's 2 things to choose from and you make a decision, it's almost always going to be the wrong one. At least you know which drivers are in the car. You don't have to speculate about that at all. Although I have to say, some of the liveries
you say that
are fairly yeah, well, some of the liveries in the single-seater formulas are pretty similar. That's one thing that I always had an issue with. You really do have to start spotting driver helmets sometimes, don't you?
Catherine Pitts.
Yeah, now that's out of 2nd position. How close is Tor? Not that close in the 25. There is Pierre Caffer. What's the what have you been able to gauge between the difference between those guys on Michelin's and you guys that everybody else is on Dunlops, of course?
Well, in the wet, black and white, they really do have an advantage, and you saw that when we ran on Friday. It was incredible, and also in the ELMS race.
LMSI,
Man, it was incredible the speed that they had. In the dry, I'd say it's probably nip and tuck. Perhaps a shade towards the Dunlop tyre being the better one. Obviously, variable compounds of the Dunlop tyre. We've got a hard one and a soft one, realistically. So.
And what are you using here?
Soft.
Yeah.
Soft. Yeah. Surface not really that abrasive. So the soft trend towards the soft tyre. Some might be on the hard in certain configurations of compounds. We like to mix and match as well.
Yeah. Oh, you can do that, can you?
Yeah.
Oh, that's very, on opposite sides of the car?
Yeah. So, for example,
this is mostly an anti-clockwise circuit, isn't it?
Here we're not, but the tendency might be to run a hard left front, for example, because the left front does so much work. So that's always a consideration.
Just on board with the 51 Ferrari of Jimmy Bruni going through that serpentine section and being passed as if he's chained to a post by one of the Audis. That would be Alan McNish, who's just gone through there over the top of the. Oh, I was just going to ask you to do a bit of comms on us for there. Just over the top of that little brow. That's a tough little corner, that, actually, because as you come over there, it looks to me as though the road falls away a little bit.
Yeah, both of those rights in the middle of the first sector are front tyre killers, and you have to be really cautious. I was absolutely making sure I did not go over the slip angle of the front tyre in those early sections.
What do you mean by that? What are you feeling, and what are you doing to combat that then?
So you see the lot go on, and obviously you see the car move, and you'd see the car point into the corner, and you never go beyond, so you can feel the front tyre slipping across the road,
effectively
scrubbing across the road, just like a rubber on a piece of paper where you're rubbing out your name you've written wrong somewhere. You know, absolutely, you just lay rubber across the track
from the front tyres. So induced understeer, induced push, effectively.
You make it understeer only as much as it really has to.
And you're feeling that through the steering wheel?
Absolutely, yeah, you have to. If you're going to maintain a set of tyres through 2 stints, you have to be aware of those things.
Marcel Fessler in and out in the #1 Audi. That was very neat indeed. Alex Brundle with us for a couple of moments more as we've got 45 minutes left to go. In fact, actually, Alex, I'm going to shake your hand now because we're going to go down and speak to Bruno Senna down in the pit lane with Louise. A perfect chance to swap over here in the comms box.
Bruno, you're obviously really watching those timing screens at the moment. It's not been a bad one so far.
Yeah, it's very close between us and the Ferrari. Unfortunately, I had a tire to eliminate and missed a few laps on my stint, and that can put us in a tough situation. But Fred has been doing a great job. He's been very, very quick, and so hopefully we're going to be quick enough to stay ahead of the Ferrari. But yeah, very anxious time for us, and we need to make sure that we keep on pushing hard.
Thank you.
Paul Truswell back in the UK. Interesting that I'll come to you in a moment, actually, Paul, about that #1 Audi stop. Let's go to Shea Adam down in the pit. Shea?
John Gaw, the 97 looks like it's ready to be back out on track. Why is it not?
Yeah, the team have done a terrific job, and they've replaced the broken part, and we're ready to go, and we're very keen to do so, and we're just about to get out of the pit right now. The scrutineers are just double checking that they're happy from a safety perspective, which we are, so there should be no problem, and we'll push for the last few laps if we can, and then score some points for the drivers.
How many more laps do you need before you get the points?
We think we need about 12 laps.
So you need as much time as you can to get back out there and get those points.
Oh yeah, it's getting pretty close.
Oh gosh, best of luck.
Paul Truswell back in London. You were watching, back in the UK rather, you were watching that #1 Audi stop. They didn't put tyres on Fessler's car. First time that we've seen that, sorry, third time that they haven't done tyres, is it?
No, that's the first time they've not done tyres. They've had a couple of stints where they've come in and not changed the driver, but they have changed the tyres. That's the first time that they've not changed the tyres at all for Audi. And I just wonder whether they're doing a little bit of data gathering, and this is turning into, rather than a battle between the two Audis, as going back to the very first thing you said, John or Jim, I think it was, you know, they're looking at it from the point of view, how do they beat Toyota? And in order to see what the tyre wear is going to be like when Alan goes out for his double stint, which is going to have to be a double stint on the tyres, as we were hearing from Alex, they're trying to sort of use Marcel Fessler a little bit as a guinea pig, I think.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that the Toyota, of course, didn't take on tyres at its last stop. Will have to do now, I think. Sebastian Buemi is doing reasonable laps, but certainly nothing like his previous stint when the tyres were fresher. So I'd be surprised if, well, I mean, they're going to come in again when, not for a while yet that they need to come in, but the tyres are well past their best, I think, on that #8 car. And with the advantage that Alan McNish has, it's still going to be fairly close, though, that is for sure. But it's certainly been a fantastic battle, and I think Alan McNish has been turning a string of good laps now. All of his last 5 laps have been below 150, and 7 of the last 8. So, you know, he's turning consistently fast laps at Alan McNish, which is exactly what he needed to do.
Absolutely right, Jeremy, yes. The only thing that Sebastian Buemi can do in order to win this race, because he's going to be staying out a little bit longer, my calculation, he'll stay out till lap 178 before he comes in. The race itself, I reckon, will run to around about 185, so he'll have 7 laps to do. It's not worth putting new tyres on for that last stint. You might, even though the tyres will already have done 2 stints, I don't think there's any value in them changing the tyres for the last stint. They'll just have to come in very short splash just to get the 7 laps worth of fuel in, and then send him on his way again on the set of tyres that he's on.
Need to get back to Shea, who's watching a developing situation down at Aston Martin with the FIA WEC scrutineer in stern conversation with the 97 crew and David Richards down there, Shea.
Very, very much so, a stern conversation. The Aston Martin officials have all approved the car. The chief engineer has approved the car. The FIA officials have yet to do so. They've been taking pictures, bouncing on the nose of the car. There were some issues with ride height, with Aston Martin petitioned and won. So this should not be an issue. They're losing valuable time to get in those 12 laps, which they need for points.
Yeah, about 2 minutes a lap, maybe a little more. That is an easy calculation they're going to need about 24 minutes. There's 40 on the clock at the moment. I'll stay listening out, Shay. Keep me in touch with what you can. And David Richards is never a man frightened of a microphone stuck under his nose. So let's see how that goes. As further down the pit lane, Jeremy and I will watch for an Audi pit stop. And this, then, Jeremy, should be the last call along the lane, along pit road for the number 2 car.
3 or 4 laps yet. I would expect to see number 2 car onto pit lane. It's interesting. We've hardly seen or mentioned the Lotus team. Number 32, Thomas Holzer driving that car now, up into 3rd place in a class with various other dramas that have unfolded. So hats off to Lotus. I mean, they had a disastrous start with James Rossiter in the 31 car going out at the very first corner. But the 32 cars run nice and reliably. It's a couple of laps or so behind the class leader, Mike Conway. But hey, that's no mean feat, is it? Because that ADR Delta team has been absolutely superb. They've been winning or showing front-running pace at least on a regular basis this season. One last time out in Brazil, looking to make it 2 in a row, and well on course for that this afternoon.
Shay, this has not been resolved anytime soon by the sound of it down at Aston Martin.
It not only has not been resolved anytime soon, the FIA official who is making a decision about whether or not the car was safe to go back on the track has left Aston Martin to seek approval from his superiors. They are taking their time here, and the Aston Martin people in this garage are not amused.
Wonder what would happen if they just went out and then, waited for and clocked a few laps whilst they were waiting for that to be found out, or whether they wouldn't be scored. I suppose that's the issue. I saw at least two rather burly engineers standing on the front of the car and jumping up and down to prove that it was sturdy enough not to break again. Let's keep our eyes on some of the other battles. The front of the field will come to a head in a few moments' time when we get the pit stop. But Jeremy, P2, there's some interesting battles there with just small gaps for some of the podium positions still.
Yeah, absolutely right. We just mentioned Thomas Holzer running in 3rd place in a Lotus, but James Walker in the 2nd of the ADR Delta cars, the G-Drive machines, is closing up very, very quickly, right up onto the tail now of Thomas Holzer, and I fancy we'll be looking to make a move on this lap. This is their 155th lap. A couple of laps down on Mike Conway, but it's again the 2nd of the ADA cars looking to get on the podium as well.
Paul Trustwell is predicting McNish in on lap
169, John. So he's just gone through completing his 167th lap. So he's got to complete the one that he's on, and then he'll come in at the end of the next one. And that will leave him with still half an hour to go. So I'm pretty sure they won't change the tyres.
And will that have been a full?
The other information I've got here, it's actually telling me the temperature still in Texas is still 29.4 degrees. So the temperature has come down a tad over the course of the 6 hours, but not really very much.
The track temperature, however,
the
Paul,
track temperature as well is still very high indeed. So if tyre wear was an issue, then the fact that it's now fairly late in the day, 4:30 in the afternoon, hasn't made that much of a difference.
41.1 the Michelin track temperature. That's 106 in Fahrenheit. One question, gentlemen, I'll throw this to both Jeremy and to Paul. We're coming down to 36 minutes left. We know that Audi can do 42 minutes on a tank of fuel or thereabouts. Why wouldn't you have had McNish in as soon as that pit window opened to put the fuel in to make his stop shorter? Or does that get balanced out and they're getting ready for him in the pit lane? Or does that get balanced out by the extra weight in the car? Jeremy, I don't know.
So what was the question?
Why wouldn't you have had McNish in at 42 minutes as soon as he could go to the end to make the fuel stop shorter?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on if they're happy with the tyres. I mean, on the number 2 car has changed tyres at every single pit stop, and that's the only car that has done, I think, pretty much in the whole field. But so if they're confident to be able to run a whole extra 30 minutes or so, which they will need to do on this final stint, then that's fine. And it's going to be interesting to see, how those tyres degrade or not. We've just seen Sebastian Buemi get down into the 49s the first time in quite a while in car number 8.
Paul, why wouldn't you bring McNish in at 42 minutes to go?
because you're going to lose the lead anyway, and the longer you stay out in the lead, the better chance you've got.
See, I'm not that sure, because if the danger is if a safety car comes out, and if you're in the lead, you pit as soon as you can so that you can't lose track position. He loses all of that. If a safety car comes out in the time between 42 minutes and now, he loses his 40 seconds, and it's a different game. It's two different ways of looking at it. Let's have a listen to the team radio. Let's see what Kyle's saying.
We're in this time. Fuel only. Traffic oxygen only.
Well, there you go. Fuel only for Alan McNish. The tyres will be left on for the first time for more than a stint. Meantime, there's been a bit of a coming together at turn number 12, and the 25 Orica G drive car has gone around, and that was James Walker in third position, and Tom Kimber-Smith is the next guy back, but he's almost a whole lap back, so he won't have lost a position, but that stopped James Walker's charge towards the cars ahead of him. He has been put some decent times in there. Now, in the pit lane, Alan McNish. I know that Shea is still up by Aston Martin, so we will watch this. It's only going to be fuel enough for 34 minutes. What we need to do, if you are here, is watch down the pit straight. We know it takes around about 25 seconds just to come in and drive straight through. Stop. On goes the fuel hose. A quick tear off of one of the windscreen films that are there. Must be about 15 of them laid on there, and that's pulled off. McNish just calmly sitting, retightens his belt. The left-hand side door is closed with a new drinks bottle, pressurized drinks bottle. Where is the Toyota? There it is, it's gone through. So it has gone through into the lead. Sebastian Buemi takes the lead with 33 minutes to go here in round 5. And off goes Alan McNish after a roundabout. Well, Paul will tell us exactly how many litres of fuel went into that car as soon as it comes up. 53 second stop.
9 litres of fuel went in.
1 minute and 1 second. So take 25 seconds off that, and that is how much fuel went in. About 36 seconds worth of fuel went into that car. That's quite a lot of fuel.
By my reckoning, the Toyota will need less than half that amount of fuel, and so we'll be in the pits for around about 45 seconds. So it'll only lose 15 seconds. Sorry, it will gain 15 seconds on McNish on that stop.
And the deficit coming into this round when McNish pulled into the pit lane was around about 37 seconds. So the Toyota is still about 25 seconds shy.
Well, then it's all going to be down to lap times, which is the way it should be. I mean, as I
absolutely.
Say, we said this. We had this conversation 2 hours ago, didn't we, Jeremy? I'm of the firm opinion that races like this should be defined by the lap times of the drivers out on the track, rather than anything clever they do in the pits or on the strategy or things like that. It's a motor race. It's about cars being driven by drivers, and for my money, it's all to do with lap times.
100% behind you.
Okay, they did not change tire. They did not change tire. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep pushing. Confirm if you're okay.
Now that is interesting. That's Matthew Nellel talking to his driver, Seb Buemi. I think they were expecting Audi to change tyres, as they have done for pretty much every single stop before that, and Linnell telling Buemi they did not change tyres. Keep pushing, tell me if you're okay. Let's head back down to Aston Martin. I haven't seen the car come back out. This is the 97 car, championship leading car for drivers at the moment. Shea, what's going on?
It is still sitting in the garage. About 5 laps have passed since the official left, which is 5 laps that the 97 has not gotten under its belt. It needs 13 laps total, and as the clock winds down, it's looking less and less likely that those will be achieved. David Richards said, you know what, we're just going to run tomorrow for an hour and get the laps that way. Keeping a good attitude about it.
A few extra points might make all the difference when it comes to the end of the season for Stefan Muka. Now 51 and 71 are together. Bruni and Kobayashi, and Bruni has gone through, so that is now second place for Jimmy Bruni, which will give them the lead in the Drivers' Championship as we leave Austin, Texas.
Yeah, Jimmy's been there for a while, but Tony Villander has caught up with him now, so the battle is heating up there.
Yeah.
Kamui, I should say, yeah, absolutely.
So
done a nice job, I think, today.
Kobayashi?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I rate him. I really do. I know he had some issues. Nick Damon always said, I'm not sure he'll make a sports car racer if he can't concentrate for an hour and 20 minutes in Formula One. How's he going to do in sports car racing when he's got to drive for longer? But of course, if he's in a GT car, seldom you do double stint. So you're probably only doing 50 minutes at a time, and he has been very, very good and consistent. Now, it looks like Audi are going to come in as soon as possible, Paul, because there are Audi mechanics out there. Toyota, excuse me, and Buemi does not have to pit now. So are they reacting to Audi then?
I think they probably are. They want to get their car in and out. They're going to carry the weight advantage. The only thing is a weight disadvantage. They're going to leave him on the same set of tyres. They're just going to put the fuel in that they need and hope that they can get him back out in the lead of the race. Now, 25 seconds is the gap at the moment. That's not going to be enough. What they need is to leave Buemi in the car, get Buemi to lap more quickly than McNish, which is a tall order, although the last couple of laps were pretty quick ones from Buemi, to be fair to him, all underneath 150. But it's a case of having to get Buemi somehow in the lead of the race, keep him in the lead of the race. If they can lap more quickly, then they'll get to the lead of the race by that virtue, or they're going to end up following this pit stop behind McNish and then having to pass him.
Interesting, the two Ferrari.
They need a full court. They need a safety car, basically, the Toyota.
Yeah, not while they're in the lead though, because they don't want to have to pit in a safety car. That's probably why they want to be out there. The battle between, get in and get their pit stop done. The battle between the two Ferraris for second place in GTE Pro. With Bruni and Kobayashi's got a Aston Martin trying to insert itself into there. It's into the lane. Comes Buemi. Gets down, make sure he doesn't click and get pinged for speed limit. 60 clicks. Loic Duval and Tom Christensen sitting in the pit, waiting. And Shea Adam is down in the power by this pit lane.
The fuel hose goes in. There is no plans to change tires, but the driver change is going on. Stefan Sarrazin climbing behind the wheel of the car. Buemi getting out. He's limping slightly, like his right leg may be bothering him. But Sarrazin in the car. Interesting that they chose not to change the tires along with the driver.
They haven't got time. They've blown it. They've blown it. The Audi's gone through, and that's it. End of.
They didn't have any chance in any case. They were going to be 25 seconds or so before, when they came out of the pit lane behind the Audi in any case. So,
Alan McNish has scored as the leader at the completion of lap number 172. We'll get a word from the guys down at Toyota Hybrid, but Buemi clearly suffering there as he limped out of the car. And interesting then that Mathieu Linnell had said, "Are you okay?" in that last message that we heard, and that maybe the heat has then been taking its toll. A little bit of smoke out the back of the Audi there. We do tend to see that. Tom Christensen and Loic Duval looking on. Their World Championship fate in the hands of Alan McNish, who goes around the Morgan Oak number 45 and heads into the stadium section. There is a bit of damage on the nose of the number 2. It's been there quite a while, just where the grill section, the air intake section is, with the protective wire mesh. Right, let's get back to GTs, gentlemen and lady. Fred McAvicky leads in the 99. He has done such a good job in today, as has Bruno Senna at the head of the GT Pro field. And Jimmy Bruni and Kamui Kobayashi are trading tenths of seconds through here. The number 97 Aston Martin story continues to rumble on. It still has not come back out of the pits after the FIA scrutineer wouldn't let it go. And Graham Goodwin is here for a little update as well. If I can just put him on the mic. We've been following this with Shea Adam down in the pit lane. We saw the bottom wishbone be changed. The guys tested it. They were happy with it. Guys jumping on the front of the car. There was a scrutineer there who has now left to consult a higher authority.
No, it's actually it's Daniel Perdrix who is down there, and he has made it clear to Aston Martin Racing he will be going to suggest to the race director that it is not allowed to restart. The designer of the car, down from AMR, is down there and says he's more than happy. If anything, he believes it's stronger than it was before the impact. John Gore is happy, the drivers are happy. It's all rather unfortunate, really.
I should say it wasn't the wishbone, sorry, that was broken. It punched the top of the shocker up through the shocker mount, didn't it? Sorry, that's what broke.
What they've done is replaced a part and repaired another. Spoke to Ollie Gavin, who was standing there looking slightly bemused, and asked him if he'd ever seen anything like this before. Oddly enough, he said he had, and in that case it was a repair that needed to be made to a Corvette in order to beat Aston Martin Racing in the LMS back in 2003. But it's quite an extraordinary scene down there. Car up on the jacks, down from the jacks, guys jumping on the front, scrutineers putting iPhones in to have a quick look, a better look at what they can find. But the reality is, as the clock ticks down now, all hope is reasonably gone that they can actually score those points.
13 laps, and that would be 26 minutes.
It's too much. It's too late now. So well, I think I heard what Shea said, and David Richards repeated the same to me, which is we'll run the car for an hour on tomorrow and show them they're wrong. Very sad, really, because a great run, and poor Darren Turner, you know, head in his hands, of course, when he got out of the car after, you know, what you have to say was a mistake. But as he quite rightly said, they've done it 3 times. It's just, you get that entry into that complex wrong, you're almost doomed.
Thanks, Graham. Graham, go to dailysportscar.com. Don't forget their coverage free to view this weekend, courtesy of Nissan. And keep up to date with all of the machinations from that on dailysportscar.com throughout the rest of the weekend and into the early part of next week. Let's concentrate on this Ferrari battle where Kamui Kobayashi is chasing his teammates down. Now, will he get the go? Will we get the...
Kamui is considerably faster than you.
The thing about it is, of course, that Jimmy Bruni and Giancarlo Fisichella are better placed in the championship, aren't they? So
well, they could be leading the championship at the end of this if they stay where they are. Yeah. I can't imagine that they'd get him to move over.
No.
Or will Kamui get the...
Jimmy is leading the championship.
I would think so.
Well, you should do. It's a team sport. I know that there's all kinds of nonsense talked about team orders in motorsport, but it is a team sport, and you've got 2 cars there for a reason. And when you're racing for a manufacturer's championship as well as a driver's championship, you have to maximise what you can get for both of those. And it's a nonsense to think that Kamui Kobayashi wouldn't like to be second instead of third, but it's also a nonsense to think that it serves anybody at AF Corsa or Ferrari, including Kamui Kobayashi, if by taking the points away from Jimmy and Giancarlo, they then lose the World Championship by a couple of points. Oh, that Ferrari on downshift sounds absolutely magnificent, doesn't it? That's a V8 that is a Ferrari V8 that is living up to the V12 sound, because that is nearly as good as a V12 F1 engine. Some of us are old enough to remember when you had the choice of cylinders, of how many and what configuration. And if you haven't experienced the oral pleasure, it's URAL pleasure of a Ferrari V12, you haven't lived.
Yeah, the Matras and the Ferraris back in the old Formula 1 days really were fantastic. The Alfa Romeos, brilliant.
All sorts.
Yeah, the Matras through the trees anywhere, basically, Formula 1 or Le Mans, wherever it was, absolutely superb.
Now here on the circuit is the battle for GTE Am lead. Jamie Campbell-Walter and he is close right up on his teammate in the number 95 car, Christian Poulsen.
He has indeed. There's the gap between the three of them on the last few laps. He's pulling in about 3/4 of a second a lap is Jamie Campbell. Walter got the hammer down here. Stuart Hall did a super job earlier on, and now he's trying to bring home the victory once again for this number 96 team, but they've got to get past the Danish car first of all.
Paul Truswell, as we head into the last 20 minutes, the head of the field, how we're doing on lead changes?
Well, altogether we've had 14 changes of lead through the race, and only 2 cars have shared the lead, of course, being the number 8 Toyota and number 2 Audi. The number 2 Audi having led 120 laps, and the number 8 Toyota a mere 49. I should say that the number that 120 doesn't include the laps that Alan McNish has led since he took over the lead, so it's actually 123 now for Alan McNish, and his gap is going up because Alan is inexorably, not every lap is quicker than every lap, but the average laps are quicker than that of Stefan Sarazan, now behind the wheel of the Toyota, and of course even though it was a fuel-only stop, it was longer than it needed to have been, as you kind of intimated, John, when you were describing the pit stop when they changed the driver. It was longer than it needed to be, because by changing the driver, even though they didn't put tyres on, which was quicker, changing the driver did take longer, given that they actually only put 38 litres of fuel in it, and could have taken considerably more than that, but they only put the 38 litres in, which was enough to get it to the flag. But the change of driver really scuppered any chance that they had. But even then, Sarazan would have had to have lapped more quickly than McNish, and that he's been failing to do. So the gap has been creeping up the last 10 or 15 minutes or so since that final stop. So all other things being equal, the race is there for Alan McNish to have won, which I think probably means that Audi has won the World Endurance Championship.
It does.
But I don't think it is enough for McNish to necessarily say that they are the world champions, because I think there is still a chance that the number 1 Audi team could better their total, but it would mean absolute disasters in the remaining races in Japan, China and Bahrain for the crew of the number 2 car.
Well, no, coming into this race, exactly correct, Paul. Audi will be confirmed as manufacturer champions if it stays the way it is. Coming into this race, it was still possible for the number 1 Audi, even if their teammates finished second at every race, for them to take the championship. But they would have had to have won every race and taken pole position at every race. That is now not the case, and they need the intervention of something else. Just winning and taking the pole for the defending champions, the number 1 car, will not be enough. Toyota need to get between them, or the number 2 car needs to have some terrible incidents befall it, and for it not to get through to the finish and either not score points or certainly not score second place points. There will be 2 Toyotas at Fuji, of course, so well, it's not beyond the bounds of possibility.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. And I mean, what happened to Stefan Sarazan in Interlagos could just as easily have happened to an Audi. I mean, it was one of those moves which, you know, okay, there was risk involved, but you know, there are things that can happen that are outside your control, which take you out of the race altogether, and then you don't finish, and then you don't score any points, and then, you know, the championship is blown wide open again.
I've left this rather late, so we'll have to get this in quickly. We traditionally always do a Radio Le Mans